This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, and maybe Simon Slater sticking his whatever he's got over there to stick into episode number 136. How you doing, Tim?
I am doing okay. We had a great show last night. You know, we went late. We went into the usual late hours that we do sometimes when we're feeling a little celebratory.
Well, that was just 2/3 of or 3/4 of Retrovirus. The show was amazing. Drum was a great club. Everything was cool.
Pleasant surprise. And
I didn't hear any. I heard no complaints from the penis gallery, which was good.
Hilarious. Yes.
Yeah,
well, it was a little trifecta. I had my Super Bowl party on Sunday. Didn't really do much for Valentine's Day, but it's funny that it's not funny. Super Bowl is the domestic violence day of the year every year, and then you had Valentine's Day the day after. So I guess there was probably a lot of makeup sex and maybe makeup to hide some bad evidence of what
as I've always said, Mother Nature is getting pretty pissed off at the men who have been doing her violence. And The last week, kind of incredible. I mean, the absolutely enormous 7.4 magnitude underwater volcano off of Tonga, well, that was last month, which spewed debris as high as 25 miles into the atmosphere, considered to be one of the strongest ever recorded. And its explosive yield, how do you even count this? From 5 million to 30 million tons of TNT. That's according to NASA. Record plumes of ash, but also lead. This was, I think, one of the most incredible parts of it. And NASA has some pretty great footage from the International Space Station. But between January 13th and 14th, there were 590,000 lightning strikes.
Whoa.
Let me say it again. 590,000 lightning strikes in 2 days. No, never recorded that many.
So that's abnormal. Because I don't really know.
Unbelievable. Of course, it was then followed by a tsunami, which, I mean, did some devastation, but it's kind of miraculous not that many people died. But that was a major event. And then we had a much more alarming event this week, a series of small, as if there is such a thing, small earthquakes in North Korea at its shuttered nuclear test site, highlighting the area's geological instability. And hence that they could begin testing, nuclear testing there again. They stopped, they said, since 2017. So at least 4 earthquakes, 2.5, 2.3, 1, 3.1, hit the region in the past 5 days. And Punjire, which is the Northeast Korea, it's supposedly the only known facility for conducting nuclear tests, again, claiming they haven't done any testing since 2017, but they're about to start again, which is outrageous. Now, it's, there's often earthquakes that happen. How ridiculous is this? And nuclear test sites, because it's freaking disruptive.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what Mother Nature had in store.
Oh, yeah. Mother Nature has no problem. I mean, people always talk about, the planet and environment. Environmentalism is mostly about preserving a environment that helps sustain human life. I mean, at the end of the fucking day, we're fucking destroyed in a second if things get too out of control.
I mean, the underground, I don't know if you saw any footage, but that underwater volcano, and I'm telling you that the satellite footage is just, it's outrageous. Well, it was much bigger than Krakatoa, much bigger than Mount Washington.
They were lucky it was underwater, because if it wasn't, it would have we would have gone into like a little mini ice age or something. I mean, that's like a 1 in 1,000 year volcano. Now, in terms of the lightning strikes, now, did you know that Florida is the lightning strike capital of at least the United States? I don't know if it's the world, but it happens there a lot. And I'm going to segue into this horrible story about Timothy and Tracy Ferriter, who had this adopted teenage boy, 13, and they're keeping him in this garbage container in a garage, and with just a mattress and a camera and a bucket for him as a toilet. And he somehow escaped, and he ran. There was some school near their house, and he went there, and he's like, I don't think anyone loves me. Well, those two fucking got arrested pretty much immediately. I never understand these. Like, foster parents that conspire to do this kind of stuff. What's even going on?
A lot of times it's just actual parents themselves as well. I mean, what is into people's minds? I mean, you can almost understand the mindset of a serial killing couple, but not when they're a couple abusing their own kids, locking them into cages or in the basement, not feeding them, torturing them, and eventually they're either going to die or they're going to get out. And how damaged do you have to be?
That's really, I can kind of empathize with some kind of criminal minds out there, but that one, like, what the fuck is going through your head? I don't know.
We are sick.
Oh yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, this is kind of since it is Valentine's Day week, this is kind of a cute story. A 300-year-old bed sheet.
Okay.
Embroidered with a love message in human hair that was possibly taken from a severed head is to go on display. Whoa. In a London museum. Now, one of my favorite museums in London is the Wellcome Museum, which has physical oddities. It's just great. It's free, great bookstore, cafe, love it. Anyway, Anna Marie Radcliffe embellished the old linen in memory of her husband, James, who was beheaded for treason in 1716. He was the third Earl of Derwentwater and the grandson of Charles II. And when he was 26, executed for his involvement in the first Jacobite rebellion. So he involved in the Protestant Catholic rebellion of 1716.
Okay.
So it's intricately decorated with flowers, leaves, and a large wreath in the shape of a heart. And the bed sheet's inscription reads, "The sheet off my dear lord's bed in the wretched Tower of London, February 716, by Anne C. of Derwentwaters." Experts believe the hair used by Anna could have come from herself or her husband, or she could have intertwined a combination of the two. She was allowed to actually take charge of her husband's body, including the severed head, after his execution, providing her with the opportunity to cut locks of his hair as a keepsake. It's just one of the many personal stories in the exhibit that reveal the impact of public execution on the lives of Londoners over the centuries, a city that witnessed the brutal death of so many, from ordinary Londoners to some of history's most high-profile cases. I mean, the London dungeon is amazing. Also, this bed sheet is the first time it's being shown, even though it was acquired by the Museum of London in 1934. So it's proper and wonderful timing. I wonder what else is in that exhibit. I'll do some more further research on that.
Human hair doesn't human hair, doesn't it rot eventually?
I know. I mean, I've done some art out of human hair, but I'm kind of voodoo. I'm Voodooing.
Well, I mean, those extremely expensive mattresses made in Sweden, Hastings. So I guess they use horse hair.
That makes I get itchy just thinking about that. I was so tired 2 days ago, I would have almost given $100,000 just to get a good night's sleep, but I can assure you it's not going to be on a bed made of horsehair. Just saying.
This woman identified as Maxine Mason of Connecticut, she died. I mean, she was dumped off at a Bronx hospital. 2 women were in the Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. I don't know where that is, but she was kind of half naked and like just confused and like, she needs help. They dropped her off. Well,
off in the cemetery?
No, they found her kind of walking half naked, kind of like a zombie movie, like Night of the Living Dead. Doesn't that start in a cemetery? Anyhow, she's kind of like, and they dumped her at this Bronx hospital, and upon evaluating her situation or evaluating her body, she was given a ton of butt injections, but they don't know why she was wandering around. They don't know what the hell happened, but it was toxic, and well, she died.
So it wasn't a far call from the cemetery to the hospital and back again.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, a little ping pong action going there. Oh, did you hear about the shark attack in Sydney?
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Man eaten.
That was the first one in Sydney in 60 years, and there's people fishing and hanging out. It's, it's kind of winding down the Australian summer right now. And some guy was just like blood curdling, cry for help. Like, oh my God. And a lot of times, even with great whites, maybe less with the tiger sharks, but this was a great white. So a lot of times they just investigate with their mouth, and their mouth is huge, so they take a bite and then you bleed it.
And they don't like it, right? They throw it out.
This one was
hungry,
full on Castle Wolfenstein. I mean, he fucking just shot this fucking guy. They only found like pieces of his body. I mean, that was it.
Hungry shark.
Yeah, 15-footer.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a big one. So that's yikes.
I would say. Well, this is kind of a Valentine misadventure story, but I just had to. I think you can relate. I hope you can't, Tim. Professional clown has penis amputated after being diagnosed with
heard about this.
Penile cancer. Now, Richard Stamp's play, because life imitates art far more than art imitates, does it? Richard Stamp's play, Dick, One Man in 100,000, which will be performed in London, maybe the first of its kind. I mean, where else have you heard of a clown performing a one-man play about having his penis amputated because of penile cancer? Now, the story starts.
So rare.
It is. That's one man. Well, one man in 100,000. So the story starts 2 years ago when Stamp discovered a small lump on the base of his penis, but he had a little bit of pain. So what? He let it go.
VD or something.
He tried antifungal medication. He thought taking a trip to the ocean, the salt water would help.
Whoa.
The lump didn't change. So finally, he ignored it until he.
Not a good idea.
Not improving, and finally decided to visit the doctor, and things escalated quickly. He went in for a scan, immediately sent to a specialist. The doctor evaluated that his penis had late stage penile, and he would have to amputate the penis, or the disease could be fatal. So a biopsy confirmed Stamp's misfortune. The lump had grown, and now it was causing a lot of pain. What had been a pea-sized lump was now more like a cocktail sausage. It couldn't be, and residue was coming out, and it was very, very painful. So, in one way, Stamp was very lucky. If you think of luck, his local hospital was one of the leading penile cancer hospitals in Europe, and he opened up to his family, including his 2 children. He's like, look, nobody had ever heard of this. So he decided he went for surgery. And then the doctors assured him that he was kind of lucky because they could save a little bit of his penis.
Oh boy!
And he could evil chuckle, and he could even have sex, and they could reconstruct possibly in the future. So he was able to leave the hospital. He still had at least the base of his penis.
Oh God! So it's like a tree trunk.
The cancer had not spread. So it was just so bizarre. He had to turn it into his one-man play, Dick, one man in 100,000. Now, I mean,
at least he has a sense of humor.
Does he have a choice? I mean, and the thing is, he found many opportunities to share his art. I mean, performances at medical conferences, cancer charity events. At one event, 150 participants donned penis suits and did what Stamp calls the willy wagger. I insist the dance is done at our next after hours, Tim.
I mean,
got that willy in order, baby. Anyway, because of this, awareness is growing, and it should be growing. So
no pun intended.
He's made appearances on Stand Up to Cancer, and he's even been approached to do a TV documentary titled "Shopping for a New Penis" on Channel 5, the British.
I mean, I gotta dig this guy. I mean, wow. How about just redirecting trauma in a very positive way?
Hey,
I don't know what to say.
Most that's what most of my friends do. And I mean, this is guys, you feel a small lump, go to the doctor.
He should, if he finally can get some kind of prosthetic penis, it should maybe be like red, like a clown nose or something like that. Like I don't know what he's gonna do.
He's already got 2 kids. So I mean, I say he could strap one on or just, massage that stump until it grows.
Well, he could turn into a peg boy too. I mean, there's a few other options.
Hey, never a problem.
Oh, God.
Well,
poor guy. Poor guy.
I mean, well, I don't know if there's anything to top that.
I mean, hold on. This is Sophia Jarao from Puerto Rico is now, and Valentine's Day was the showcase, Victoria's Secret's first Down syndrome model for lingerie and all that stuff. It's insane because I think like the CEO a couple of years ago, just when the kind of like the latest kind of trans trend that was happening, he was like, we'll never have a trans model. Well, now they have, and now they have a Down syndrome model. So I think Victoria's Secret's going out of its way to at least try to convince society that they're woke.
Well, I mean, the other
I
side
don't know
of
what
that,
to say.
well,
I'm sure, why not?
well, she looked pretty good. I did see a picture, but the other side of that is, people are they sexualizing Down syndrome? It's like,
Well,
look, excuse me,
I
all
mean,
kinds of people
yes.
need love and can be sexy. And if that's, I mean, they've got to come out, amputees, I mean, trans, Down syndrome, whatever. These people exist. There's all kinds of people. Let them do what they want to do.
There would be
And if you can look, people can sexualize anything. They can sexualize a can of freaking beans.
yes. I mean, a sexual relationship between people with like Down syndrome and people who don't have it, that is a thing. I mean, Simon's ex was going to law school, and one of her peers, one of her classmates, had a sister who had Down syndrome, and she was, an adult and was kind of like disappearing for days. And the family was like, where are you going?
Frisky.
And eventually it was revealed she was dating some like guy who just got out of prison or something. And she's like, we're in love. And of course the parents were kind of progressive, but they're like, what do we do? Oh my God. I mean, complicated. When I would do summer, the jazz brunch, the gay jazz brunch at some restaurant in Cherry Grove, Fire Island, I would start around 11 a.m. and I'd probably take the ferry back around 2 p.m., 3 p.m. And there was a kind of a faux hawk guy who had Down syndrome who was kind of cruising. I kind of walking. And I was like, oh boy. I remember I was telling the piano player as we're about to get back in the ferry, I was like, well, what's interesting about this is pretty much in Cherry Grove, it's pretty much guaranteed he's going to get some. And this giant Roger Ebert looking butch behind me was like, I heard that. And then she burst out laughing. But, I think the guy wanted to have fun. Let him have fun. Let him do his thing.
Tim, take it from a woman who knows sex appeal isn't always about how the other person looks. I mean, after all, a lot of us women go to bed with some of you men, and it ain't necessarily pretty.
Oh, yeah.
We just do it.
Yikes.
Hello.
Yikes.
Now that brings us up to somebody who no doubt if she had, you never know. I mean, I've talked about I've talked with our next guest, Jex Blackmore, about going into business with me. As you know, February is vasectomy month, and we're thinking of starting our own. Did you remember there was a few months ago on the corner of Houston Street, they had like a dispensary, a vending machine for female monthly products and birth control. I'm like, I really still like that idea of kind of a peep show for penises to get vasectomies coming soon. and let me now introduce our next guest who's totally in with the idea, and that would be Jex Blackmore. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dole. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our very special guest, Jex Blackmore, activist, artist, antagonist. Does that kind of sum you up, Jex?
That'd be a good start.
That's right. That's why we're here to discuss more of what you've been doing. I think your latest outrage, which got a lot of press and it actually in the right world would have changed a few things that are going down, was to take a morning after pill on live TV, which I commend you for highly.
Yeah, it was actually not a morning after pill. It was the abortion pill. So it's different than Plan B. So it actually induced an abortion.
What is the abortion pill called? Does it have a name, or is it just called the abortion pill?
There's two pills, and they're mifepristone and misoprostol. Those are the two. So those are the two that actually induce an abortion.
Which I guess you needed at the time.
Yes. And to your point, Plan B will actually just will prevent implantation, like a sperm from implanting in the egg.
It's so important right now because of how backward, we're consistently going backward in this society as technology advances. Civilization seems to, fall backward with all of the uprise. And again, I thought we settled Roe versus Wade.
No, we absolutely didn't settle it. It's been kind of at a precarious place for a long time. So it's only been a matter of time that it was successfully challenged, given the rise of right-wing religious propaganda
And Mitch McConnell stacking the courts. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but you know about Mitch McConnell's first wife, the one who teaches women's studies at Smith College. And
we tried to get her on the show.
She has a memoir coming out, and basically since that divorce, you know, people are just fucking assholes. I think a lot of his motivations and his determination is rooted in his anger towards her, basically. And it's
what I find really weird about the extreme right wing, you know, so-called pro-God, which to me means pro the biggest asshole who promoted violence against almost everybody that didn't agree with him. That is the God of war. Is that you would think they would be pro-abortion because who white women will find a place to get an abortion or get the abortion pill, but minorities who they fear and are proliferating, you would think they would want the minorities who they can't stand to have abortions. But I guess God is greater than their racism.
Well, it's interesting because Republicans actually supported Planned Parenthood as a great, and family planning as a great economic resource and tool, because it is. And it was during when Nixon was running for office, the platform shifted so that they could appeal to essentially racist white religious voters in the South, using this thing called the Southern Strategy.
Southern Strategy, yeah.
Right. And what they wanted to do was appeal to people who didn't like the civil rights movement. So the foundation of this whole thing is really rooted in racism.
Yes, it is. I mean, all these switches are always interesting. How Northern Republican industrialists were on the winning side of the Civil War, and then of course labor Irish machine basically appropriated Democratic Party for, you know, it's just all the tribalism is always so insane.
But I got to push the point, because this is how far their heads are up their own ass. Again, if their racism was greater than their faux religiosity, it would be a very different twist on this. There would have abortion clinics on every corner, and there would be birth control. It's hard enough to get. By the way, Jex, February in my house is free vasectomy month, and I say just send the men over, and I will perform a very simple operation.
So let me ask you, with you know, you can spare the details or you can give the details. It's up to you. What's the abortion pill experience like? I mean, how late were you on the stage, if I may ask? And like, I only knew about Plan B. Actually, of course, now it makes sense that there's something else called the abortion pill. But is it a hormonal like nuke, and you're just like, fucked up for a while?
Well, it's different for each person. I would say I like to say every abortion is unique, because it truly is. Everybody's body responds differently to medication, and we have had it we've been using abortion pills since I think the FDA approved it in the year 2000. So there's always a surgical abortion, or not always, but legal, you know, since the 70s, we've had surgical abortion, and then we've had this medical option, and the medical option works pretty simply by the first pill that you take stops your body from producing the hormone that helps the fetus grow. So it kind of cuts off its food in a way. And then the second pill that you take, misoprostol, you'll take like a few hours later. I can't remember the exact time, but then it actually expels the contents from your body. So it will create cramping and bleeding. And so, and also can, it has a lot of shitty side effects. So it's used also as like an ulcer medication sometimes. So it's not just for this reason, but it can make you nauseous. The cramps are pretty painful. It's similar to like having a miscarriage, essentially. I mean, it's the same medication that you might give someone who needs to have a miscarriage. Some people describe it as, you know, like a really hard period, but my experience was pretty shitty. I mean, like I vomited. I've taken it twice now. The first time I vomited. I was like laying in bed watching the movie They Live on repeat for some reason. It was like another world of hell I decided to enter into. Yeah, and then I just bled for like 4 hours and fell asleep feeling exhausted. And the next day I woke up and was like pretty much okay. It's not as like the surgical abortion's way easier in my opinion. It was like a breeze. That was just like getting a gynecological exam, but if that's not an option, the medication's the way to go.
Is it
so when you were bleeding for those 4 hours, did anything come out other than blood and maybe a clot?
No, it was like blood in like multiple clots, but I wouldn't just, it was like a really strong period. It wasn't like I could see like a hand or something ridiculous like that. It was something.
Well, this is what people really need to know as well.
Yeah, sure. Did Rowdy Piper's performance and They Live kind of ease the pain a little bit? Did he buffer the experience?
Honestly, I was just like, it was just like this, it's like the world is a hell. And I was just in it. I was just going deep in those waters, being like, oh God, like what a nightmare that I even have to like be stressed about this at all.
All right.
As I told Tim yesterday, I had a Hot Rod t-shirt. I think a lot of my performance is based on the exuberance of a one Rowdy Piper.
Hell yeah.
Others would say macho woman, but call it what you will.
So let's jump back to the beginning, Jex. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Detroit, suburb of Detroit. My dad is a funeral director. I come from like 4 generations of funeral directors.
Okay.
So they had funeral homes in Detroit. But I grew up in a suburb of Detroit. And when I was about 19, I moved away and I lived in Montana, I lived in Boston, I lived in Texas, and then I came back to Detroit about 10 years ago now.
Okay. And what were you doing in Montana, Texas, and Boston?
Getting in a lot of trouble.
Escaping one place for another.
Yeah, I met someone in Mexico on a trip and they just happened to live in Montana and we knew each other for like 24 hours and they were like, do you want to come live with me? And I was like, okay. And it was the first time I'd ever like seen a mountain and it was great. Was
this person a cowgirl? I don't know who this person is.
They were a punk. They're just a punk.
Oh, a punk from Montana. Oh boy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of skinheads and punks. It was a wild time. For those years I was really just like partying, organizing, and flipping cop cars and burning buildings down. All of those things had happened and did happen. And then I decided to go to college.
In Texas or in Boston?
I came actually back to Michigan. I went to University of Michigan. I didn't graduate, but that's when I came back.
In Ann Arbor?
Yep.
Okay.
By the way, Jex, I know that you had something at the Ann Arbor Film Festival. I'll be there this year. I hope that we can meet. I hope we can meet. Coming with Joseph Keckler. We're doing a variety of things. I hope we can meet. We'll talk about that later after the podcast.
Yeah, I would love that. Lydia, actually, you were here in 2015, I think, at MoCAD, the Contemporary Art in Detroit. And I came to that and we took a selfie in the bathroom. You're like into me and my girlfriend's hair.
I'll meet you again, maybe not in the bathroom, maybe in the
that was that big open space show. Was it the Ruffle Rock Band? Okay, I was there.
Yeah, but I also recorded one of my live spoken word albums at the Detroit Institute of Art. I don't know what year, but Oral Fixation. It was a fantastic. I'm looking forward to coming back. Yeah, Detroit is very much like Rochester, where I grew up. I mean, they're kind of twin cities to some degree.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that.
Rust Belters, radicals, because we have to be.
Yeah.
So now, in your earlier punk or problematic youth activism, were you doing spoken word or anything like that, or were you mainly just doing actions?
I was doing actions. I was writing a lot, so I would say that that's kind of like always been a core part of my artistic practice. And writing music, I studied music actually at the beginning of my college career, and in high school I was a professional opera singer for like 6 years.
Well, University of Michigan Ann Arbor's got a great music department. Were you in that music department?
That's how I got into University of Michigan.
Well, congratulations.
Then I like switched over to studying art after. But so I had been writing, and then kind of that turned into like the necessity to read like revolutionary works or to like, I just kind of had this like frustrating thing where I was going to protest and organizing with people who were like more like hippies, I guess, or like whatever that would be called today. And it was really frustrating because all the music I was into and listening to was like politically oriented, like people who were actually like considered like crass or something, that were like terrorizing the people in the 80s. And I was like, why is punk not a threat anymore? Like punk's supposed to be a threat. And so I just wanted to merge those worlds together, because it wasn't really that way, 20 years, it's, you know,
yeah. Well, yeah. Well, once it was commodified and hijacked, it was pretty much, it was only a threat to the consumer, basically. But
right.
I always know when a witchy woman has volumes of writing under their bed.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I always know that. You know, I think it's so important, whether it's through actions, writing, even if nobody reads it at one point, or spoken word. I still think it's, you know, some of the most important formats that women still need to embrace, which is why I also do workshops. Just, okay, you write, how do you perform it? I just think it's so important for women to have that vehicle, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the naked word is still one of the most powerful. I mean, of course, I've done music, you've done music, we do music, but I still think the naked word. And in the documentary Hail Satan, you have some pretty powerful speeches going down there, sister.
Yeah.
I'm cackling.
did you see the Satanist movement as just a transgressive one where you could find a voice just for as a platform for you? Were you attracted specifically to the Satanist? It's called Satanism, I guess, is the religion. I don't know. There's different degrees. I mean, or was it all the above? Like, what attracted you to that?
I kind of found Satanism on my own in my like late teens, and it was I spent some time in the church on my own, kind of exploring religion, and I thought I kind of came out of it feeling very traumatized and disturbed by.
In which church? Excuse me for interrupting.
It was a Wesleyan church. So I grew up like in the Lutheran church as a child, and then I joined a Wesleyan church. It was very cult-like, and I grew up in kind of a not a very good home life. My parents were just like constantly fighting pretty brutally my whole childhood. So the church was like this place where I went that like really like adults would like scoop me up and take me and like take care of me, and I was like, this is a safe place. But really, what I realized later is that I was in a very vulnerable space, not having a support network or having the resources that I need to be okay and feel safe. And they took advantage of that. And then in doing that, kind of propagandized this like sexual shame and guilt and like all of these gross things that the church does. And it was kind of through that process and hearing then about like how they describe the satanic character, people that are demonic, were like sexually promiscuous or had lustful thoughts or were envious or all these things where I was like, I don't know, like that side sounds a little bit more like right to me.
So how did you first come into, because I always find this interesting. I always say until quite recently, a lot of religions, people that are religious in the Catholic Church or Jewish or Islamic, they are very ready to declare their affiliation with the church. And it's only recently, actually, as the different organizations within whatever temple of Satanism are becoming more politically active. I think that people have no idea of what Satanism really means. And the thing is, one of the things I say, I don't announce myself as a Satanist. Why are you announcing yourself as a Catholic or as a Jew? I don't announce myself as an ex-Catholic, but it's only recently that actually there's been a proliferation. And just by watching the documentary Hail Satan, you see how many different branches there are. And I want to discuss with you, first of all, did you come to Satanism via Anton LaVey, via the Church of Satan, or how did you come to find it out anyway?
Yeah, I actually came to it through the Bible. I just thought that all of the scriptures that they said about sin and evil and the devil, just I identified with. I was like, this feels like the real world to me. And all of these things that they are saying that we must repent or ask for forgiveness seems like extremely unnatural. And, you know, it goes into this idea of like original sin. And I was like, I don't buy it. I think that this is just a game. Like, and then I studied history and I was like, okay, I know I see how the church was invented as a tool of lifting up institutions of power. So I found Anton LaVey later and read the Satanic Bible. And I was like, okay, it was all right. I mean, I think that he was kind of saying the same thing and had a lot of like influences from like existential philosophy and nihilism. But I thought it was like, I don't know. By the time I read it,
kind of corny.
It was corny. I mean, he was corny, you know, he was like a performer. Yeah, exactly.
It was a corny.
Yeah. And it was also, I just thought like really degrading towards women. Like the conversation that the Bible talks about, or the Satanic Bible, is like women's power is rooted in their sexuality and their like cunning, but it was not about their like intellect. It wasn't about them just like as a just why does gender even, why was there the distinction? And, it was written, I think he started writing it in the late 50s. So, I mean, there's a lot of that. So I don't know.
He's just trying to manipulate so he get laid more. It sounds like.
But
I think so.
Oh, definitely.
Excuse me. That's why people join rock bands. But I first of all, Jax, my father, not a religious man, sold glorious Bibles door to door for a short while. And reading that at 9 and going to Catholic school, trust me, I got rid of God very early on.
Yeah.
One of my main spoken word pieces, which I did mainly in Europe in the 90s, was called Real Pornography. And it was just all about the God bullies.
Yeah.
So I've been attacking God the Father for a long time.
I was going to ask you this, Jex, though. I mean, essentially, Satanists are Judeo-Christians because it's all based on the Judeo-Christian Satan. Am I wrong? Because I don't really know, but it seems like that's the model of Satan that it's all derived from. So you're on the other side of the fence, but essentially it's a Judeo-Christian perspective.
But Tim, I'm jumping in. Basically, Satanism is based on rebellion from false virtue.
Sure, but the false virtue, the false virtue that was projected and designed by Judeo-Christian.
Well, I mean, I don't know. The idea, the satanic idea does actually span multiple different types of faiths. I mean, there's always kind of the othering or the person who's, the outsider. And I think that you could say, there are people who believe in like a literal Satan, and they believe in hell. They believe in their worldview fits within that religious supernatural framework. And I see it much more as a cultural issue. So the devil has been used, people throw the word satanic and devil around all the time in our culture, whether or not it's associated with religion. So like we call terrorists evil, right? We call criminals evil.
Abortionist
evil. There's you can read stuff where they say that Hillary Clinton was evil, whatever. This is like anybody that the normative culture wants to reject and control by associating with the kind of cultural and social norms that we know about, which of the devil, which is like what is in the Bible. So it's like the manipulation of religious and Christian dominance in our culture to identify and create outsiders out of people who rebel against those systems.
The thing is, the guilty are always suspicious. And that's why they put blame on the other and have to design the devil. First of all, there would be no God, quote unquote, which is, by the way, how am I supposed to believe in somebody that looks like my grandfather in a bathrobe in the sky, who's killing his only begotten son? And as I've said before, if Jesus did exist, he was a gay drug dealer who liked to hang around with hoes, killed by a cartel that didn't like him selling their drugs. It just, the Bible is one of the most violent Marvel comics ever written. It's always, there's been so much murder in the name of the Catholic Church and abuse of children, pedophilia, denial, hypocrisy, land grabbing. The Catholic Church for so long, especially in Europe, was about land grabbing and the power. And how else to convince people to be fearful and obedient in this life than to promise them eternal hell or eternal virgin sacrifice at the end of your filthy cock.
Yeah, no, I think that's really spot on. Obviously, like it's the thing that really gets under my skin is when there'll be a story every few months about the Catholic Church raping children, and people will be like, this is just so evil, like what an evil or satanic thing and I was like, no, that is actually just Catholic. Don't get Satan involved. Like that is what Christian religion looks like, actually. So let's just call it for what it is. It's not
tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Genocide. The amount of death is insane.
Yeah.
And again, look, we could do for just 1 minute. We'll talk about the witch hunts of, especially, thank you, the Spanish and their great God, about condemning women for a multiplicity of reasons. One, and I wanted to cut in when you were saying something before that they are denouncing women, going back to the original Carney Church of Satan, sexualizing women when they should just consider them an incredible force of nature that has intuition, that has knowledge, and why women were condemned to death under the witch tag. which I take great pride in, is they knew about herbs, they knew about abortifactants, they were perhaps promiscuous. Why shouldn't they frickin' be? And they had too much knowledge and refused to buckle to the obedient masturbator God. So, and this in a way still goes on. And I have to ask you this, Jex, because I can't believe I only found out about this quite recently. You know why they say that witches fly on broomsticks?
Why?
Well, the creative artists that most witches are, and this is back, some centuries ago, were carving wooden dildos and then anointing them with psychoactive drugs. So they were flying, but grim fairy tales is not going to depict a hot witch, satisfying herself at the end of a psychoactive.
Yeah, I love the depiction of like the ugly crone, which is like being like this sexual, like deviant, that's like chopping off penises. Like I'm down for that image.
Have you ever read Mary? Have you ever read Mary Daly? Gynecology, Pure Lust. She's one of my favorite writers, an Irish writer who was a theologian and actually went to the origins of a lot of words like crone, like witch, and brought us back to what they really meant.
I mean, the depiction of the ugly, grizzled old witch. I mean, this is what men have depicted, because men will be simultaneously attracted to a promiscuous woman, but then they're ultimately disgusted by them because they're disgusted with themselves for being seduced. So they have to portray it as this repellent because they can't get rid of the fact that they've been seduced by a woman, essentially.
Well, it also just feels like it's just this, it's still happening. Like with this abortion that I had on live TV, there's like this subsect of like hate mail I get that's just men being like, ew, who would like fuck you? And I'm just like, and then they're like, and I'm just like, but here you are, literally like in my DM, sucking my dick, like get it, like what? Who are you kidding?
Right.
But
I'm gonna cut in to say, I'm sure a lot of people would be lining up, honey, to have any kind of sex with you, and probably for pay if you put the auction up on your website.
100%, and believe me, that's how I pay some of my bills already. So it's
you are a good witch.
yeah.
Which is which here? All right. Anyhow, so you're in the church of.
Wait, hold on. Tim, let me just let you know. So
please.
I was writing a blog called Raw Pussy, and it was all just like radicals. I was trying to like write about radicals in history and just like
free radicals.
Right. Yeah. And so then I heard about the Satanic Temple forming because they did like their initial like thing at Harvard. They did like a speech with Zena LeVay, I think. And I was just going to Boston to visit some friends and was like, hey, can I interview you for my blog, Raw Pussy? And that's how we became kind of like involved. And then they were like, will you come on as a consultant? Because you seem to like be cool. I don't know. I think they were like, we're a bunch of nerds. We need someone who's like cool and down.
Roar.
And I was like, okay, sure. And so I was kind of their a consultant to them for like several years before kind of becoming a public spokesperson.
Okay. All right. But then you eventually officially became a member.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Member was like not, I guess. Yeah, sure. I was a spokesperson and like organizer.
Okay. All right. And so the next question is, living in this world, I mean, how often would you get threats? Physical, I could only imagine. I mean, if fucking people in the name of Christianity are blowing up abortion clinics, I can only imagine if you're like as conspicuous as can be, like, I'm into this, not only just saying I'm into Satan, you're also taking fucking an abortion pill. I mean, that's a little provocative. I mean, there are some fucking crazies out there. I mean, how's that? What kind of blowback have you gotten?
I mean, who is more violent than a religious fanatic of any denomination? They are extremely freaking violent and in the name of their God. But yes, please.
Yeah. I can't even count how many like death threats I've received, but most of it's through email. So, whatever. But I have at one point somebody did. So I got doxxed the Proud Boys once doxed me and like and stalked me for a while, and then and there was somebody with a gun that came to something I was doing at the Michigan Capitol that was like advertised. So I try to be pretty careful about like if telling people where I'm going to be when.
Sure.
But I've kind of relaxed on that a little bit more because I feel like there's been some legitimacy I've earned through reputable institutions that provide a level of protection for me as like an artist that I didn't have in the beginning. as just like an extremist.
Well, and also some of the things that were said, or that are basic, the basic premise is that, I mean, in intelligent people, is the fraudulent founding of this country on religious freedom, which it is not, it was not, it was puritanical perverts, first of all. Second of all, there was supposed to be a separation of God and state. There is not, as is noted in God We Trust on the dollar bill, in all of the anthems that America promotes, in depictions in marble weighing a ton of the 10 commandments in front of Capitol buildings in various states in this country. So just it's just so bullshit. It's like, that's what's good about the speeches that some people in the different factions of the various Satanic Temple have been making to justify and to have people understand, look, this is not about evil. This is not about the Satan. It's not about the devil you created. This is actually about compassion, understanding, and letting people be what they fucking are.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's really interesting about this like public declaration of being a Satanist that you mentioned earlier is that there's like power in being part of a religion in our country, because we provide all these exemptions and privileges to people who identify with religion. But fortunately for us, there's not actually, like, the state doesn't want to really get too nitpicky about what's a religion and what's not. So we can exploit that to provide, to kind of like, the idea is that it can be exploited to access particular rights and privileges that are being denied to people on religious
Absolutely.
grounds.
As they always say, follow the trail of money. Who's not taxed? Corporations and fucking churches.
Yeah.
I mean, it just says it right there. It's right there in front of our eyes. So yeah, and I love that about the documentary. Just the hypocrisy that is, which we all know, but I mean, you're putting it right up to their fucking face. And that's
well,
it.
And it has to be told. That's the bottom line.
Well, and also, like, regardless of what, it's like, even if this form of Satanism wasn't about compassion and was just like, I don't know, about, I don't even know what people, it's hard for me to like know what people are really offended by, but like, yeah. And it's just like, too bad. Like, that's, if you want to grant exemptions and privileges to religions, like, you have to be willing to do that for all religions.
Yes.
Even if I'm like, I don't know. Just doing something that people think is not compassionate or kind or whatever the hell. Like, sorry, that's too bad for you.
And also, excuse me, Tim, there's also a lot of dialogue about radical Islam, but there's very little dialogue occasionally slips into the news about radical Catholicism or, again, the pedophiles there. I mean,
to get all the privileges of an official acknowledged religion, whether it's tax write-offs, whatever, the things that you're exposing, like, how come we can't be? At what point, like, does the government recognize, like, yes, this is a religion? I mean, what stops any of us, like, on my own religion, just me? There must be an actual technical or administrative side that you have to prove. You have to have X amount of members. I don't know, how's that even work?
even with which a lot of people have a ministerial position in the Universal Life Church, non-denominational, where you could do weddings, funerals, and baptisms. I mean, basically, even through that, if you have just a very small number of attendees, of a secretary, for instance, I think it's only 3 people you need. And trust me, I have no idea why I haven't. I think the time is coming for me to tax-free status for the coven.
There's actually not very much standing in the way of anyone doing that, except kind of just like the legal know-how.
Right.
But really, they do want to usually see that you have some type of like belief system that's defined, and there's a group of people who gather in a place to do whatever worshiping that might be. But you can define that on your own terms. And like, really, the defining features of what we call a religion, there are non-theistic religions in the world. There's forms of Hinduism that negate, part of the belief system is a rejection of God. So you need kind of a shared values system. There's often some type of ritual practice of some kinds, a history and aesthetic. Like, these kinds of things are just usually a defining feature. That's not like a legal thing, but that's a defining feature of religion. And certainly Satanism falls within that category. I mean, and much more than like Scientology.
Well, I mean, Scientology is definitely one of the most.
Is Scientology a religion in the government size? It is. So they don't pay taxes and all that stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what. So I mean, that's the thing where it's like, I don't know. And I think that I don't have faith that the Satanic Temple is going to win any of their legal arguments, unfortunately. And kind of that, but I think that it has merit from a cultural standpoint. I think that it is an important thing to remind people of, and then potentially in the future, someone else could be successful in court, or maybe if they're around for the next like 20 years, then the tides will change. But the courts are really not into granting religious freedom to Satanists.
I think the main point is to get out into the public's ear in as many ways as possible. First of all, the hypocrisy so many of them have bought into, whether it's political, religious, educational, racist, sexist, and then to present an alternative and try to make them understand that, look, first of all, most important, rebellion from false virtue, rebellion from hypocrisy, some kind of compassion, understanding, allowing individuals to be unique. Hello, welcome to my frickin' church, which I've been saying for decades. Rebellion from false virtue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, I find the conversation about like what's legally justifiable a really like pointless conversation, because it doesn't really matter. The justice system is corrupt and broken, absolutely, and will not. There's like no real concept of justice, I think, that actually exists anymore in any way that's like practicable or measurable. So the idea that like you can take an idea and like win in courts based on like this theory is just pointless to me. And I'm of the opinion that you cannot actually like reform a system, like work within a broken system in a way to reform it. It doesn't work. It's not. That's the whole point of the system. So I'm into like just burning it all down. And I think a lot of people should also do that, or I would encourage people to do that. And that's one reason why a lot of the work that I've engaged with and actions and things that I'm doing kind of plays on the traditional forms of political power, but just kind of does it completely using the language of rebellion that I think speaks to the outsider, by saying like, we actually still have the exact amount of power, maybe not wealth, but a certain amount of power as the people in the ruling class, but we just have to organize and use it to build new systems.
Yep. Absolutely.
One of my tenets also is that, and I've been talking about this for a long time, is, and this is really basic, is you have to recognize where every single one of your dollars go. Because for the most part, now as mega corporations have, co-opted everything, almost every dollar you spend, if you're not really careful, is going into the corporate klepto's pocket. And that's one small way that the individual can actually have a conscious rebellion, is do not support these corporate kleptos and know who actually owns the company of the crap you're buying. And, that's why in some senses, I mean, I'm a communist, is I think that, we have to, as radical individuals, have more exchange of talent, of product, of information. And I think this is just really, really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk. So now you're no longer with this group, right? I mean, what, if you may, if you'd like to volunteer, where did the splinter, where did the break, and why did the break happen?
Yeah, it's actually really frustrating because the documentary is I don't know, it's telling a story about the Satanic Temple, and it's very much a curated version of the truth, obviously. But the temple and I kind of had, I was like supporting their legal cases, but I was very much more interested in, I started the chapter system. I was like, I want to get organizing with the people on the ground and expanding networks of radicalism across different movements. And that became a sticking point. They became very concerned about their legal positioning. I don't know. To me, there was just this difference in belief about reform versus revolution. And so I had kind of stepped away from an organizer of chapters that I started and was just doing. I was a spokesperson for the women's reproductive rights work that they were doing. And we had kind of clashed a bunch of times because there was a lot of times where I was passed over, or the Doug, who's identifies as a male, was speaking on behalf of women at conferences. And I was just like, why are you doing that? And then they got really weird about, because Black Lives Matter kind of kicked off in 2016 when we were active, and a lot of members and people wanted to work within that framework. And they were like, no, we're not supportive of their position on Palestine. And I was like, this is too weird. Yeah. So anyway, so I'd been building this distance, and then I had a performance of my own, which was a ritual performance at a warehouse. And I used some language that they thought was criminal, even though
as I like to say, it was very, as I call myself, evangelical.
yeah, yeah,
and radical,
yeah,
and revolutionary.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, this is how this is the language that I wanted to use in my performance, and I'm proud of it and have no regrets. But I think they like sent a spy essentially in to police my language and find a reason to ask me to leave. So we were already both like on the rocks for a little over a year, up until the point that they kicked me out. And then their language, I mean, I think that the thing that does the most harm is their rhetoric. Like, well, Jex advocated for violence. I said, let me just put this, I would love to do this on the record just one more time. The issue they took was, I had a thing that said, we're going to like storm press conferences, release snakes in the governor's mansion, and execute the president. And it really grinds my gear that people are like, she said, execute the president of the United States. Like, no, I didn't, because I believe in executing all the presidents. And they were like, this was like an anti-Trump thing. And I was like, no, it's not. I don't actually care about Trump that much. Like, the entire position of the hierarchy that exists in governing states, like, should be abolished. And so anyway, so it was just too reductive and annoying.
And again, this was under the guise of a performance.
Yeah.
In a performance ritual space. And I never have a problem with preaching to the perverted, because I will preach to the converted, the perverted. Those are our people. That's fine. But again, that they're monitoring a performance, but we've also seen this happening from without the system. And to me, it is kind of understandable that there might be a split, because first of all, the most important thing to me is, besides the freedom of artistic creation, is within whatever branch of the satanic, quote unquote, the Satanic Temple, is to try to get people to understand the hypocrisy they live in every fucking day by following the other religions that they do. Yeah, totally. And that is like part of the thing that is so irritating to that point, Lydia, is that they were like, this is violent speech. This is she advocated for violence. And I was like, actually, what I was advocating for is a rebellion against the violence of the state. And I was like, and Angela Davis said this before me, but it's like when you're out there and you see police executing people for no reason except that they're poor or Black, or we have like this poverty cycle, where people are just profiting off of the labor of poor people. Like, that is violence. That is true, just devastating violence. So prison industrial complex, and thank you, Angela Davis. And the police, by the way, killed 1,055 people last year.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. And then when they get killed, everyone stop and salute. Everyone has to stop their day, and it's very frustrating. And no one individual is worth a million motherfuckers. It's like the imbalance is just out of control, and it's not sustainable. It's not even sustainable.
Right. Well, totally. And so the idea that I'm the violent actor is just it's laughable. I'm like,
well, you made me chuckle.
yeah. So,
I'm talking to you, honey. I know why.
Yeah, but if someone wants the part and they want you out, they'll find something. And
it was fine. It was it was mutual. At that point, I was like, if you're gonna police what I say on my own terms in my own performances, like, goodbye, my friends. Like, we're good.
Do you perform often? Okay, so you have, for instance, like your more political, news bombing stuff, like the live abortion, which is great. And then what about performances? And do you find it hard to get performances? Are you performing regular? Do you want to perform more? Hello, double bill.
Yeah, I would love to perform more. I did a performance this year, this past October, in a church, and it was really amazing. And I kind of, it was Gaelic spoken word, and it felt really good to be back. I took a break because of COVID. I do sometimes have trouble. I don't know. I sometimes have trouble because the Satan thing, and it's like there's venues and promoters that are like, we would love to provide a space for you, but then they literally will sometimes get like death threats. Yeah. And I think that, again, maybe that's shifting now as I'm getting a little bit more like mature in my work. But it's true that there's been times where I have just such a hard time finding a venue, because people will be like, we're going to burn your building down if you let this pro-abortion Satanist have an event there. So that can be tricky. Yeah.
Truly awful. I mean, it's ridiculous. And but this again is one of the reasons where most of my performances are done in Europe, and they have been for decades, because it's just a better understanding of every form of creation, especially, you know, the avant-garde, no wave, punk, call it what you will.
Yeah.
So when you took the abortion pill, why were you invited on that platform? I mean, did you kind of stage it like, I'm going to do this, and they're so sensationalistic that they're like, yes, let's bring it on, and they have to pretend like, oh, I'm so shocked. Like,
or was it just to discuss the looming abortion news?
Yeah, so I had been on that show. That segment's Let It Rip, which is just like two people that opposing view yelling at each other. Twice before.
What network is Let It Rip?
It's a local Fox affiliate. So in Detroit, the Fox News.
Yep.
And so I had been on before. I debated two pastors about Satanism, like years and years ago. And so I was working with a group called Shout Your Abortion for like the anniversary of Roe, and I was doing a guerrilla postering campaign. So we were just like wheat pasting massive posters all around the city of Detroit, like in the actual neighborhoods, so that people had access to the website that will help them get abortion by mail. Because we are just assuming that abortion will become illegal, and we want to make sure that people know that they can get it through the mail without seeing a doctor and for cheaper than they can at a clinic. So I was doing that, and I put out a press release. I believe in the press as a very powerful tool to manipulate and use. So I put out a press release, and then Charlie, the host, invited me on to talk about abortion access through the mail with an opposing viewpoint, which is this like radical anti-abortion extremist activist. But then, so then I was like, great, well, this is, maybe I'll just take an abortion pill.
Pretty bold.
I didn't tell him. I decided, I think like the night before I was going to do it. And I did not expect that it was going to become I was like, oh, probably get some like local attention, but it definitely became a thing.
They can't, the oppositions to abortion, they can't help but look at porn. They can't look at basically everything they claim they're opposed to. They can't stop looking. And,
being a fan of what used to be the Operation channel, I say live vasectomies would really help promote our cause.
Yeah, we should do, Lydia. We should do that as part of a performance and reading with a live vasectomy.
So I mean,
February is.
Not to digress.
Why not?
But all throughout the 90s.
Look, trust me, Tim has heard this speech from my mouth at least 75 times. Tim is February, free vasectomy. Come on, honey, be the first in line.
I'm not against any of it. I'm not against any of it. I'm basically not against them. But
I have the tools.
What the fuck in the 90s? I guess they just had to fill up airspace. I think there's like just too much content. Why do they need to fill it up? The operations that were on stations that you were on for like 3 hours at midnight.
And then loved it.
What was that about? I guess people watch it. I mean, frankly, it was mostly gross.
Somebody that's had a lot of surgical interventions against my body. I found it quite fascinating. I want to know what's inside there.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. So when you take the abortion pill, it goes viral. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe she did it." What's the blowback? I mean,
did you live stream from your bed the bleeding?
Oh my God,
I didn't. I kind of was just I
didn't think so.
Yeah, I years ago I wrote about my first abortion in a blog like every day, and that was actually really, it was great. That also went viral. But it was just like me like sitting in the suffering, and I just like was really, when you're writing and you're documenting, it's just like I would have rather like forgotten that it was going on. Again,
on a more political and scientific level, I mean, we can have access. Men can have access to Viagra. They still haven't made a pill, although they have made a cream called Foria that is a little bit more stimulating for women. They still haven't found a cure for the menstrual monster, which happens to women every month. Some suffering heinously. Look up vaginal steaming women just to get rid of those blood clots. But, there's still so much lack of research about ovarian cancer, about anything that affects women's reproductive body. And now, of course, again, still ongoing, their rights.
Yeah.
There's just not enough research. This is why when people ask me, what is your advice for young musicians? I'm like, become a doctor, a chemist, a scientist, an abortionist, an architect. We don't need more music. We need more doctors of the right sort.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So what was the blowback? Did some of your death threats come after you took that pill?
Yeah. Yes. People, I mean, if the death threats are like, well, no, I don't even want to go into this because I don't want anyone to hear it and get any ideas. But yes, I definitely got some death threats, and I don't know. It's just
right. Allow the fetus to live, but kill the woman.
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite things. People were like, "Your mom should have aborted you," and I was like, "So you're pro-choice, asshole?" Like, what? And they're like, "Oh, well, only people I disagree with," and I'm like, "So you're like into genocide based on ideological grounds? Like, what are you doing? Like, get off."
And most of the anti-abortionists, not most, there are factions that are for wholesale genocide or the killing of other people who disagree. So again,
it's
save
ridiculous.
the fetus, kill the woman, kill the concept, fuck off.
Yeah, it's just
I'm definitely not pro-choice. I'm definitely pro-abortion. And when I say that, people laugh and stuff, but I'm actually serious.
I'm pro the choice to have an abortion.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
I will say that my I'm now on TikTok, which was a platform that I was like, I don't know about this. It like the video blew up on TikTok, and then I was just getting like inundated with messages from like teenagers who were just like radical as fuck, and they're just so down. And I was like, damn, this like platform was invented by like China to disrupt Western culture. But then I was like, oh, and we can also use it to continue to disrupt culture as like a medium to communicate in the language of the youth, which I think is like extremely important because they're often the ones willing to like step up to the front lines, and they're important.
Yeah, and also, but isn't there to go to Planned Parenthood to get an abortion? I don't know, maybe it's state by state. If you're under a certain age, you have to be accompanied by parents.
Depending on the state, you either have to get permission from your parent or get a permission from a court. And actually, recently in Florida, a teen went in front, because there's organizations that will help you go in front of a court so you can not have to tell your parents. And recently in Florida, a judge denied someone's request for an abortion because of their GPA.
Yeah, exactly. I read about that.
Meaning they had a high GPA or a low one?
I think they had, yeah. And
they had what? What's that?
I think they had a low one, and that's why they.
So if you're basically dumb as a brick, make sure they have a fucking kid. Yeah, I know.
Well, and that just
not that the GPA defines your intelligence, but you know what I'm saying.
No, the other side of that coin is all of these assholes who have graduated from Harvard and Yale, the old boys club, who are in politics now, who are the biggest perverts on the planet, who don't give a shit about the individual, who care not about anyone who has less money than they do. It's like we have these people, these men mainly, that are super supposedly smart and have the worst concepts for continuing life, because it's just, again, the worst part of the patriarchy promoted by now fresh-faced politicians. I mean, they don't get any dumber than half of these people who are constantly on TV, and they have the credentials that does it mean nothing at this point?
I have an idea. If I'm not running for any position, but I'm gonna maybe just put it out in the air. So all the people who are politically active in terms of obstructing abortion, they're so quote unquote pro-life. Let's have them just sign these petitions. You're part of a group, and then we have to tax them, and some of that money goes to fucking paying for these kids that they're making sure are born, and then they fucking float the fucking thing rather than sitting on the sidelines and like, you have it and I'm gonna do nothing. Fuck off.
Yeah, I think, well, so that's what's really interesting to me is that we, the rate of, so let's just say, I think that abortion should just be available for whatever reason they want, as many as they want, no big deal. But if we're going to take the position of like, let's reduce the abortion rate, then we know how to do that. It's to prevent unwanted or unintended pregnancies. And the way we do that is by increasing access to contraception, increase comprehensive sexual education, and also opportunities for people to get jobs that pay well. So we know that is the way we should go about it. And yet, of course, these legislators don't believe in that. They don't want comprehensive sexual education because it offends their religious sensibilities. They don't want teenagers being able to get condoms because they have some like bizarre idea that kids don't have sex. And so it's really what I think it comes down to is it's not about a disinterest in abortion. They literally they believe that we should be punished for having sex. And that is like the fundamental, that's the core of what I really believe in my work. It's like
this is all true, Jex, but I think this is a symptom of something even deeper. Again, follow the money. Yeah. They want more fucking consumers. essentially, and they want. So even if you fail and you raise someone who's not self-sufficient, or you're dependent on some kind of social assistance, still by doing that, someone's going to pay for it, and it's still going to go right back into the pockets. It's more, and of course, this is not sustainable. There, you can have all the SUVs, you can fucking pollute, you can litter. Your fucking carbon footprint will never touch having a fucking kid. So also environmentally, it's a fucking disaster. So,
look, overpopulation is the biggest problem the world faces, because that is the cause of every problem. Because what's needed to now 7 billion. I've been complaining about this since I think there were 5 billion. I mean, I don't have enough anything to try to cure the problem. I'm just saying the need to breed is a biological insanity that women need to get rid of, period.
Honestly, I feel a little differently because, there's a lot of antinatalists that I speak to, and I'm like really of the position that everyone should be able to do whatever the hell they want with their lives, including like have babies if they want. And I think that even if we talk about, I think that the narrative that like, that if we have less babies, it will like somehow benefit the world, but we still have like airlines flying like fake flight, like hundreds of like fake flights to keep that. Like we actually aren't the problem. Like capitalist monster organizations are the problem. Like we can recycle all we want, still not going to make a fucking dent if we don't like change like the way that we have like emissions and stuff like that. So
I agree totally, and I think that everybody should have the right to do whatever they want. But I think that an intelligent person needs to realize the cost to not only the planet but themselves of how much it does take to raise a child. And you want to bring a child into this world right now, it's so difficult that I would pray that an intelligent woman thinks a little bit harder than to just get the urge to breed at 35, which most do. I don't understand it, because it is certainly the wrong time right now. Do what you want. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to be supporting anybody, no matter what choice they make. I'm totally support myself. Good luck supporting you. If you want to adopt an orphan, here I am. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that it is criminal how much blame is put on people who are having sex and how they are immoral for wanting an abortion, but we like literally don't have a living wage, that people can't survive out there.
Well, nothing kills most people's sex drive than having a child. So that's just one way to continue having more sex and to not be, spending so much money.
Well,
and be responsible for another person. I mean, be responsible for yourself, people. Let's start with the individual having more responsibility for themselves, and especially accidental births. I'm horrified.
Well, the definition of a slut, right? Someone getting laid more than you are. And going back to what you're saying is like, they're just mad that you're fucking people are having a good time and they're not. I mean, could you imagine being such a sourpuss and like, like your whole life's like that?
Well,
like, God.
Tim, my mantra, pleasure is the ultimate rebellion.
Yeah, and
I think that's true.
They should enjoy more sour pusses, but I guess they're so uptight.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the anti-abortionists and the Christian right probably have too much sour pussy in their life. But then again, they're paying for teenagers to cross state lines, so I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Exactly.
Anyway, this is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Jex Blackmore, radical activist, writer, performance artist. General badass babe.
Any last things you want to plug?
Yeah, go to shareabortionpill.info if you want to know where you can get abortion pills through the mail. You don't have to be pregnant. You can just still get them to have on hand on a sliding scale. And you can follow my work at my website, jexblackmore.com, where I will post any upcoming events, performances, or exhibitions.
Amazing. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. All
really
right, bye.
Take care.
Love the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.